Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a 4th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's the 5th American to receive a black belt from Master Renzo Gracie. He's also the creator of the Williams Guard. He's a highly respected instructor, and he's also the co-founder of Carbine Industries, a successful gi and no-gi brand. And you'll definitely recognize his voice if you listen to Jiu-Jitsu competition, as he's one of the most respected Jiu-Jitsu commentators in the game. He's commentated for the Worlds, ADCC, and many other events as well. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to be joined for the 4th time in my podcasting career by my good friend Shawn Williams. How are you today, Shawn?
Hey, I'm great, Ryan. Thanks. I really appreciate you having me on the show, man.
Excellent. No, it's so great to have you back, man. It's been, I think, since 2020 since you and I did an interview last.
Yeah.
Catch us up, man. Yeah. What have you been up to since then? How's life? How's life in Tennessee? Yeah, because I know you made a big move too.
That's right. A lot. We've been up to a lot. Moved here to Nashville just before the pandemic, and had it. Obviously everybody was sort of frozen at that time, but then eventually got a school open here in Nashville, and it's going very well. And we have a group of really committed competitors that I'm building, so that's fun. But overall, we just love life here. Everybody is we have an amazing community already, and it's sort of the place that we were looking to be in with everything's great for our family, and so we're just having a ball. But building, having a ball. Got some things up my sleeves. Hopefully will come through. So yeah, we're having a ball.
That's outstanding. Is little man on the mats already? Is he training regularly?
He is, a little bit at a time. I have a very relaxed approach to youth, just because I've seen so many youth actually when they actually start to really take an interest. So he does kind of everything. I let him. He's the gymnastics, baseball, soccer, a little bit of jiu-jitsu with me. He wrestled. He did some wrestling. So just trying to have an overall development for him and to find out kind of what he really likes and then let him go on that route. Although jiu-jitsu, I think, is going to be a part of his life. He's around it so much. But yeah, we'll get him there a little bit at a time.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I can totally relate to, because you and I have talked about this in the past, that I don't want to force things onto my kids, but I want to present them all these options. And in the corner, I'm secretly like, come on, love jiu-jitsu, please, love jiu-jitsu, come on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Deep down, you want them to love it. Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome. And Shawn, I saw that you were recently with my American BJJ family at Creighton MMA in Atlanta. How was the seminar up there? It was
fantastic. Yeah, we had a great turnout. I think near 70 people, and Paul is awesome. Everybody there is so amazing. So it was really good to see him, catch up with him, see what he's been up to, see everybody there, like in our extended family, so to speak. So it was good. We went over. I've actually done 2 there. So we went over the body lock and the near side underhook, and then some stuff from the back and some retention that I've been doing a lot of with Katagatami and some what I call closed loops. And so yeah, it was a blast to see those guys.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, Paul's been one of my best mentors, not just in jiu-jitsu, but in life, man. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And I know you guys go way back. You guys were training at Renzo's back in the early days, back above the methadone clinic, right? Or the original spot.
That's right. Even before that.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul and I met in the very original school, in the 27th Street school. Wow. And so, yeah, we've been buddies since essentially 96, early 97.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, while you were there, did you get a chance to smash my brother? I'm curious as to
not so much. I was gonna do it, but he sort of ran off the mat, hit a little. No, I'm kidding.
That's so disappointing to hear. I was really hoping you could have a great story of just cross-facing my brother.
Yeah, and he was just asking me like, "What do I do when this happens?" And I was just like, "That's what Ryan does." What do I do just to kill him?
Yeah, I see that little. The fact that he's scheming and trying to pick your brain about my game is not a surprise at all. That's the type of human being my brother is. So that's awesome, man. I'm happy that you were up there again. It's awesome that you're doing seminars so actively, and and again, obviously it's great to have you back on the show, man. I'm really looking forward to catch up with you here. Shawn, you've been teaching jiu-jitsu for a long time, and you're a highly respected instructor. And so for that reason, the topic I wanted to choose for today's episode is the subject of building a jiu-jitsu game. As you know, something that many students struggle with early on is identifying their A game. It's really common that students kind of show up and train and just go through the motions of class, but they don't really have like a clear picture in their head of what their game actually is. So let me start by asking you this. At what point in your own journey do you feel that you really had a grasp on what your game was?
Probably black belt.
Really? Okay, cool.
Not really, but like I think naturally I trained. So if you don't know where I came from, I mean I trained a lot. When I say that I was on the mats from now, when I was like purple belt, but basically end of my blue belt, I was already starting to teach a little bit. I was literally on the mats from about 7 a.m. until like almost 11 p.m. With short breaks in between here and there. And so I had a lot of time to play and just do whatever. And I wrestled in college. And I mean, it was my life. It just like completely all in on all aspects of Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. I boxed at a very high level and did Thai boxing. But when we're talking about Jiu-Jitsu, I guess because I had so much time, there wasn't like a plan for me to go like, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Just my body just naturally gravitated to what I tried everything and played around with everything. And then it naturally gravitated to sort of what my overall game is now. I don't think that's a very efficient way to go about things, especially when you don't have 13 or 14 hours a day to spend on the mat. I think there's more efficient ways to understand how to plan and build a game appropriate for an individual. And so that of all of the years of teaching, that's kind of what I've started to formulate pretty hardcore. Even my competitors now are on they're on a 4-year cycle. I mean, when I came to Nashville, I said there was a strong group of people. I said, guys, we're going to do a 4-year plan. It's not like a year plan. We have yearly goals and yearly things that we're working on. But I basically started all these guys from scratch because none of them came from me. One, but none of them really came from me. And I wanted to have the things that I do embedded into these individuals. So yeah, that sort of gives you an insight of like how long-term things can be. But I'm a big believer that there's a very efficient way to actually build what you want. And you can take a very proactive approach to doing it.
That's incredible, man. Obviously your students are really lucky to have an instructor that puts so much mindfulness into designing the curriculum and designing their game. And obviously when you're a white belt, like everything is new. It would be kind of difficult at that stage to have a game per se, just because you're still absorbing the basic movements and fundamentals of the art. But with that said, do you feel that there's anything white belts could be doing to try to set the stage at least for a game while they're in that early learning phase of their training?
Yes, I do. And that is building a strong foundation, kind of what you had mentioned on. So there's the first, you hear a lot of people say, I got to get in shape to do jiu-jitsu. No. You don't get in shape to do jiu-jitsu. You just start it. Yeah. But there are some, what I call like pre-stages to jiu-jitsu that you should be working on while you're starting. And I think that if you don't come from an athletic background, then that pre sort of stage to like a step 1, we would say, would be, just the athletic development that you need to move your body and to be aware of what your body is moving. And most academies, they have like a warm up. We have a very short warm up, and I don't believe in long warm ups. I believe in very short skill specific warm ups, so that that's the pre phase that you're going to get. You're going to get the hip escapes, the forward rolls, the break falls, the Granby rolls, these things that, lateral lunges, these things that are sport specific that you will be using on a daily basis, that might help your coordination. So if you didn't come from an athletic background, sort of a pre-stage that you should be doing while you're learning is a good idea. Then once you kind of have that down, really the foundation is pinning and getting out of pins. That's first and foremost, in my opinion, is you need to learn how to pin and you need to learn how to get out of pins. And so most of the time, people put a lot of value in escapes. Escapes are arguably the most, as a white belt, what are you going to do all the time? You're going to tap.
Right.
You're going to do tapping.
That's your life. Yeah.
So escapes are super important, but we can't forget, if you don't know the enemy, you can't prepare for the enemy. So the enemy is a pin in the beginning. The enemy is not a submission in the beginning, because you're probably going to be controlled. You're going to be submitted. That's sort of where our attention lies, because that's the end result. But how does it get there is what you really should be focusing on as a white belt. The submissions you can tap. Like in the sport of golf, they have a mulligan. So like we get mulligans every day in jiu-jitsu. So you get a tap all the time. Like you're stuck in something, like you tap and you're like, that's the easiest way out of anything, right? Yeah. But the pins, Well, that's a whole nother game. Like, you can tap, and if you're uncomfortable, by all means tap. I tap from knee on the stomach. The first time I felt Renzo ever do knee on stomach, I thought I was gonna die. But pinning is a whole nother ball game, and that's where the control element to jiu-jitsu is really done. And so you need to know how to pin first, even though it might not make quite sense. You need to know what pinning is, what the positions are, and then you need to then specialize in pinning escapes. And they don't need to be a lot. You know, I say this all the time. Good systems don't need to be complicated. They just need to be complete. And so you can, let's say cross-side, for instance, you can have an elbow escape to the guard in a single leg and cross-side and get out of almost every single cross-side with the exception of one or two small pins, and be mastering that and live that and have a very efficient approach to getting back into some offense. So first stage, the little prep, I would say baby step one, if you're going to put these in little steps, learn how to pin on the essential level, not like, you know, I'm going to pin this world champion, but on the essential levels where your hands should be, when they should be there, and then move into pinning escapes. And that's where the natural is, right? So that's what I mean by, like, you have a proactive approach to this. Natural is you're getting your butt handed to you when you're new and you're going to tap all the time. You're naturally going to get better at certain things, but proactively, you got to learn what it is first that you need to get better at. So pinning first, then pinning escapes would come second, even though that's a sort of a somewhat backwards of what you're going to be doing on a daily basis. But that's, in my opinion, sort of your first approach and your first step. But that's why positional training is the most important training that we do, because you get to pin and you get to try your pins and before you get switched top and bottom.
That's outstanding. I really like that a lot. I love the idea that you're emphasizing like the importance of reverse engineering a position, because like I found that like my guard retention didn't get as good as it is now until I started really taking like a year to focus really heavily on passing. And once I understood how my guard's getting passed, because I'm just taking that information from my own knowledge, like, okay, this is how I pass guard. So now I can see specifically what they're doing to pass mine, and allows me to defend better. So do you find that translates over to pretty much every aspect of jiu-jitsu with the students' development?
Yes, I do. I believe that you need some essential skills, and you can learn those even though you may not apply them. You don't have to be, this doesn't have to be on the application level. It just needs to be on the know-how level. And you're like, hey, I have a grasp of this, and I know kind of what I'm supposed to be doing on the offensive side. So now this makes sense to understand what I'm doing on the defensive side as well. Yes.
Yeah, I also like that you emphasize the importance of escapes, because I think that early on in my jiu-jitsu, when I first started, I obviously, just like everyone, I would get smashed for a long period of time. It's just what we all have to go through. But I sort of got myself into the mindset of, well, the attacks that I do know, the problem is I'm not applying them quick enough, or I'm not timing them right. And really, that wasn't the problem. The problem was that my escapes were bad, and my guard retention was bad. And, you know, throwing a kimura or a collar choke or something while I'm getting my guard passed wouldn't have really helped me very much. I mean, I'm getting passed, you know, I have to understand to switch to a defensive cycle rather than, you know, applying an offensive cycle quicker or something like that. So I love that you mentioned that. Now, when someone gets to, say, the intermediate level and they start having a better understanding of how to escape bad positions and how to prevent getting their guard passed and things like that, and they start being able to implement a little bit more offense, what are some things that you like to encourage people to do to start mapping out their game at that point? Like once they have a little bit better of an understanding of the world of jiu-jitsu.
Then that's when pinning mastery begins. So now it's all about control. Now, I guess I could back up a step. So there's a lot to what how I plan what we're doing, and a lot of information for, say, beginners. So first off, I guess I should say that it really depends on the individual. Sure. So because jiu-jitsu is not one size fits all approach, it's more of an individual approach. The first thing I would tell someone is, what are you doing with jiu-jitsu? What are your goals? Are your goals to compete? Because competition is different than doing this for a life and like a living and a hobby, and sort of something that you're going to take in and you're going to do it forever, and you're going to reap all the rewards that jiu-jitsu has, which is fitness. It's basically like a whole different mindset. In my opinion, it mirrors life, the challenges we have in life. I think it's like a direct correlation to every challenge we have in life. You see it on the mats. I think that's a very when you were in it, you were in it long enough. And if you really pay attention, you're like, wow, I could solve other challenges by the problem solving that's happening on the mat. If you really want to apply it to life, I feel like those are long-term benefits that once you really get ingrained, you can see that. But you've got to decide what you're doing it for. Self-defense is, I think, everybody's ultimate goal, because even if you don't come in doing self-defense, when it hits the fan and it's a dark alley, jiu-jitsu is going to be there to save you if you practice it on a day in and day out ritual. But you have to decide what it's for, because I even have approaches for arm locks versus strangles versus leg locks versus, I have approaches for sort of everything at this point, of like, where do they fit in and why are they good and why are they not good, and what maybe should be the focus on those things. So I think you need to identify what you're doing it for, how much you can do it, and then start to go so far with what we've discussed, where it's, know the enemy first, which are pinning first, and then start to master pins. And then you can start drifting in to submissions once your pins are set. So I think that I need to back up and say that real quick, Ryan. Then that gives everybody like a place. And then the other thing is, I have a thing what I call a positional ladder. And I think that is a big deal in that beginning phase. And so I just sort of put positions into a ladder. So I have a graph it's visualization, and you can just see it, where if you said in general, back control is the top of the ladder, mount is the second, turtle top would be the third, cross-side top would be the fourth, guard top would be the fifth. And then that's where the ladder would be at its even. And then every bottom position would be underneath that. So if you folded the ladder in two, then you'd see the opposite from the bottom. And something I tell people in general is, because offense comes few and far between for newer people, as we've mentioned, like, get to the top, go up the ladder, just go up the ladder. And if you can continue to go up that ladder, get to the back and then submit someone. That's where that pinning mastery starts to come in. Guard passing mastery starts to come in. And that intermediate level, you're just trying to get to the top of the ladder. And then when you get to the top, submit someone. And of course, then submissions are going to come along the way, and you're going to have more fun. You're going to be all going off on different roads. But that sometimes creates a very simple approach to things when you're a bit newer. Like, I get asked all the time, I'm sure you get asked all the time, what do I do? What am I supposed to work on today? Well, a really easy answer is just go like, get to the back and submit someone from the back. And then when you get smashed, your mind should be, what is the move that can get me out of what I'm going to get out of, and then get to the back? Whether somebody's on my back, well, then it's going to be an escape. Then it's going to be get to half guard. Now it's going to be, all right, I need to get a sweep or a single or something that can get me to the top. Then when I'm to the top, I'm going to get to the mount. Then when I'm to the mount, I'm going to get to the back, and now I'm going to submit. And if I get put all the way back down I have to start over. And then it's just that exercise to climb up that ladder, stay as far up on the top of the ladder as you can stay without falling too far down, and then get submissions.
Excellent. I really like that a lot. That's a great structure. And it's also a great visualization for students to have. I think having just a starting point sometimes is a huge step for a lot of new students. Is like you said, I always think of jiu-jitsu as like a constellation of stars. Like if you look at all the different techniques that exist, it's like, well, man, how the hell do I connect these things together? So you got to have some kind of, right. You know what I mean? You have to have some kind of way to put them all together and organize them. Right. Another thing that happens, I think, a lot, very commonly with students in jiu-jitsu is that there's a lot of recycling of techniques that people are going to go through. Like you'll try lots of things, you'll keep some, you'll discard others, and oftentimes you'll even come back and pick up something that you may have discarded previously once you're more developed and capable of using it better. What do you think is the best criteria to follow to determine if something should be discarded from your game or not?
Well, I think, again, that's the approach first. So competitors need high percentage stuff. They doesn't necessarily need to like it. It depends on the importance of the competition, right? If you're in it to win money, you don't have to like the technique for it to be a high percentage technique and be like, man, this is a very high percentage technique. And as long as my body can do it, I should be practicing that. But I mean, bigger than that, the bigger picture is efficiency first, and then play. I mean, I'm hoping that everybody's listening here is doing jiu-jitsu for forever. And if you're doing it forever, you're going to most likely be a black belt for longer than you ever at all other belts. And you have time to play, and you don't get caught, try to avoid get caught up and be like, I got to tap that guy. It's not about winning and tapping. It's about a lifelong journey to be great or you have the time to be great at everything. I mean, think about it. If you did jiu-jitsu for 20 years, if you have a very clear approach of kind of an overall game, you should be pretty good feet to floor. You should have good wrestling, good judo. You should have good grappling. I mean, it's 20 years. Or you can get caught up in being very narrow focused and coming in and rolling and doing the same thing day in, day out without a plan, without a proactive plan of where do I want to be in 4 years? What kind of jiu-jitsu guy do I want to be or gal do I want to be in 4 years? And then structuring it out backwards and working to get to that. And then that I think that way you can have time to play. You're going to get rid of some things that don't work now, but maybe they'll work in 3 years. And you can come back to that. And because your skill sets are different, you're in different positions now than you were. You can maintain mount for a much longer time. So, hey, here, let me work on this. I couldn't do this before, but maybe now I can.
That's outstanding. Do you have any examples of techniques that in your own journey early on, you were kind of like, I don't think this is for me, but then now it's like a staple in your game?
That's a good question. Not really, to be honest. I mean, like I said, I feel like because I did so much mat time, I sort of have a very conservative approach when it comes to jiu-jitsu. I like efficiency. I like things that work. And then thirdly, like, how does it work for my body? So, inverting, I guess you could say maybe inverting. Long ago, I didn't really care to invert very much. Now there were moves I like to invert on, but like in general, I didn't like to do that a lot. But then I would go through, and when I get better, I play around with it for a while, see what happens, see what it feels like to do it, and then I would get rid of it again. And I don't say I invert right now, but I guess that would be an example. I again, like, being a coach or an instructor is also a very different path than a hobbyist, a competitor. You're an instructor, you have an obligation and a duty to explore and experiment. You don't have to be excellent at everything, but you better have some time in there. You better have some time in there so that when you go and coach it or teach it, you've got some experience in there, and hopefully experience on pretty decent people. So that definitely makes an instructor a little bit more versatile when they play around in all areas, even if they don't like it so much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, 'cause at that point, it's your responsibility, like you said, to be a guide and a resource to people that are going to have all different kinds of styles. Like I've seen that happen a lot, where some instructors they teach what they know best, and I understand where they're coming from, but it's like, man, the things that you do though, there might be a guy with a completely different body type than you, or a completely different level of flexibility, or just a different style of jiu-jitsu that he plays, whether it's based on his body or his personality or whatever. So, like you said, you got to be this absorber of knowledge and this sort of catalog of techniques and options, even if you don't use them. So that's right, Ryan. And I don't think so. This is an interesting topic. I think that was sort of circulating around for a while. Do you waste time on stuff? And I have a very specific, this is a waste and that's not a waste. First, I don't think anything is a waste that you're doing. I think that everything builds valuable skill sets. But I will say, if there was a waste of time, I would say making a game that can be influenced, if you're a competitor, that can be influenced by the rules, can be a lot of time invested in something that doesn't really pay off in the end, i.e. lapel stuff. And, so if you are a worm guard freak and you spend an absorbent amount of time using the lapels around your legs. Now, I went through a period where I used the lapels a lot when I was like purple brown. I played around with all types of lapel stuff. I really enjoyed it. But if that's what your game is, and you had to ask yourself, what if tomorrow IBJJF said this is illegal? How would it affect your game? Now, you're going to be building skill sets, really good skill sets along the way. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everything you do is going to build some sort of skill set and athletic development. So I don't believe anything is a waste. But if you're reliant on something that someone can take away like this, that you have no control over, you got to be a little cautious on making a game around that part. You play with it, but you be very cognitive of like, well, my entire game is this. So maybe I need to be careful on treading down that road. So I always give that advice to competitors. If you love something,
go for it. If the rules change, it might take you a little time to, every champion can adapt. We've seen that now many different times. But that's something to keep in mind, especially if you have a limited time in jiu-jitsu. Just be careful of that kind of thing.
That's tremendously good advice. Yeah. In fact, I could see that happening even if it's not rules. Like even if it's say that like your personal focus changes. Like imagine you're a guy that plays a game that's heavily involving lapels, like you said, and then the rise in popularity of ADCC happens. Now you're like, man, I kind of want to go do that. Now it's like, there's not a lot of lapel play in ADCC, man.
No,
so it's like
that's right. That's right. I always caution everybody who does specialists, like when they because specializing in something is it strokes the ego because you can really get good at something quick and take advantage of excellent in one thing, but then you've got to always keep in mind that you need to be well developed to make sure that you don't get sort of found out, so to speak, or taken advantage of on lack of skill set. So similar in nature.
Yeah, very well said, man. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think are the best methods of like tracking overall progress in students? Like what are some reasonable milestones that they can look for to recognize progress in their own development?
That's a great question. Reflecting on their training, competitions. We have, in my opinion, I think we have the best sport in the world. Like it's got such a great community. You can compete until you're old. I don't ever drive anyone to compete because I don't think it's necessary to skill development. And it's nothing like a fight. It's just not even close. It's fighting in the street or fighting for your life is totally different than doing a competition. Yeah. It's not even in the same ballpark. But I say that reflection is the number one thing that you can do. There was a really famous Harvard Business School study on reflection, and it took a control group back. A call center control group. I had a group of people for a month long studying and working in a call center. It was like nearly 300 people the study was based on. They allowed people to work for the whole day, or they took them out of their work environment for 15 minutes at the end of the day. And that there were three groups. There's a control group that worked all day. There was a group that just reflected for 15 minutes at the end of the day of what they did, and they reflected. And then there was a group that did reflection and sharing, which would be kind of teaching in our world, right? The control group was obviously the control group. The group that reflected for 15 minutes at the end of the day performed 22% better, almost 23% better on the standardized test that these individuals took.
Wow. The
group that did reflection plus sharing performed at 25% better than the control group. So you got like a bump of like near 3%, like it was like 2.2% from actually sharing it on top. So wow. I always say like, that is what we're doing. We're in there, you're working, you're training, you're exploring. At the end of the day, you need to reflect. You need to reflect on your training. You need to take notes. You need to go, how was my training? What happened? What did I do? And this happened for me naturally because I had an hour 20 commute to Henzo's every day. So I literally every day after each training session, I would take notes and write it down specifically on how I learned it. Then I would think about what I did on training. And I think that's what made the difference for me. And I think that's what made my growth so quick, and the ability to remember and recall all the stuff that we were doing in the right times. I believe it was not only the teaching ability of Henzo, but it was the reflection. And then when you teach, for those of us who have taught, you immediately notice a difference in skill set when you start teaching it and recall. So I think first is just to reflect, take notes, 15, 20 minutes after your training, make it part of your journey that you take notes and that you keep your mind active and take a proactive approach to problem solving. And then if you can't solve the problem, you ask your instructor and then they will help you. And then I believe that you will retain it much better.
Yeah, Yeah. I can personally attest that's been the greatest revolution in my training personally, is when I started taking notes and started keeping a training journal. I do that after every class. I write down what happened, what I was focusing on. I have, goals and things I check off and everything. And I didn't start doing that till I was like late into my purple belt. And when I think back, I'm like, God, there was so much data I could have had for the years at white belt and blue belt that I just didn't think to take notes or study or anything after class. I was just sort of going through the motions. And so I love that you said that. And I think it's awesome that you did that early on. I think that's something that, if people listening are white belts or blue belts right now, man, start immediately. I mean, no matter what rank you are, start now, but the earlier the better, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I did it because it was just like I was in college, so I was like, hey, let's just take notes. Let's keep taking notes. It was natural, and it wasn't by design. Like I said, most of my stuff was not by design early. It was just because either I was a good student in school, so that's what I did. I took notes, and so it just did the same thing in jiu-jitsu. I thought it was the natural thing to do. And I do believe, there's so much technology right now. It's like we could tap on our phone. Okay, video. Let me video it. Write it out. There are some strong studies in correlation to physically writing and how it connects to your brain. I used to do this thing in my seminars all the time where I would give, and it was just reflection we were talking about. I would give a blank piece of paper to everybody and have them write 7 numbers down, and then just say, hey, here's some random 7 numbers. Actually, I wouldn't have them write the first 7 random. And we would chat for a while, and then I'd come back and I would ask them what the 7 numbers were. And typically they'd get like 2 to 3 of the numbers, because we'd chat and we'd go on. And then I would give the piece of paper with the pencil, and I would have them write the 7 numbers down and then turn their paper in immediately. And we'd just go on in our merry way and chat about it. And they would go more or less on the average of 4 numbers out of the 7, even after the seminar was over. And it's just that correlation of physically writing it down, boom, plants it in your brain. So I'm a big fan of not just make sure you write it. Yeah,
it is very important. Yeah, I've read reports about that as well, about the importance of just how writing ingrains it. It really is. In fact, it's something I do. I have my journal here for the folks listening on video. You'll be able to see this. I have a journal here that I keep all my training, and then I use a free app called Evernote, and Evernote allows you to use your camera to like highlight the thing, and then it translates it digitally too. So then you have both. Yeah. So I get kind of the best of both. But yeah, I think the fact that you were a college student when you started training obviously helped, because you were already in sort of a student's mindset. That was kind of the opposite for me. I think jiu-jitsu taught me how to be a good student later in life, because before that I was a terrible student. I was one of the kids that was hanging out behind the trailers, partaking in questionable activities. I was never like a super good student. So jiu-jitsu's helped me a lot in that way. But yeah, that is awesome, man. I really appreciate all this insight. Shawn, man, you've been on the show. This is your 4th appearance, man. So you kind of know what to expect here. This is where we play halfway through the show, we play a game with each guest called the Pummel. The Pummel's a series of random questions. Some of these have to do with jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. But if you're down to play the Pummel, I'd love to play this game with you here.
I'm all about pummeling, buddy.
I know you absolutely. You have instructionals about pummeling, man. Who am I talking to here?
Let's go.
All right, man.
Let's go.
All right, let's do it, man. This is actually Shawn's, I think, 2nd or 3rd run through the Pummel. So he's a returning champion. So let's see if he can maintain his status. Question 1: what's the worst job you ever had in your life?
Easy. Inventory job. I had an inventory job called RGIS. I think it was RGIS, Regis Specialist or whatever. I gotta say, I think it's a character trait to do your best on every single job that you have. I did my best, but that was the only job. I took my belt off. I walked right out. It was a horrible job. The straw that broke the camel's back was trying to count in Home Depot, and they wanted to count the loose screws in Home Depot. I was like, I'm 1,300 on this. I'm like, what am I doing? There's better jobs than this. I got to get out of here.
Dude, I can't believe you just said that, because I swear to God, I was just going to tell you a story. I used to work at Home Depot, and once a year, dude, I swear to God, once a year, this team of guys would come in and they'd sit there with scanners. Bro, that's crazy. And I remember
with the little keyboards on their hip.
Dude, it's the only time I felt better about working at Home Depot, because at the time I was on the lowest. You talked about the ladder system. I was like underneath the bottom rung. I was the guy that collected the carts outside in the summer. So it was just like I was like the absolute lowest of the low. And I used to come in afterwards and walk to the break room, and those guys doing inventory would stay overnight. They'd be there till like 4 a.m.
That's right. We were third shift all the time because everybody stores had to be closed.
Yeah, and so I remember one time walking through after a particularly rough day, and there was a guy sitting there scanning screws. I swear to God, he's scanning like washers and screws, and the look on the guy's face made me kind of go like, okay, well, I mean, you know, I guess I get to work outside. You know, I get yelled at by contractors, and you know, have things like tossed at me. But hey, you know what? Like, you know, I'm not.
That was probably me. That was probably me. I was just ready to take off my belt and walk out.
That's so great. I love it. What's something that you wish you were better at outside of martial arts?
Oh, geez. I mean, that's everything. I guess. What don't I want to be better at? I would want to be better at everything. Literally, I think that's a catch-all for me. I'm a consummate person, and I just want to be better at everything. I feel like I have room to improve in everything that I do. You know what? I feel patience, maybe. You know, or potentially lack of it. Maybe I'm too patient. Sometimes I'm patient until it's a fault. But yeah, maybe that. I would say probably that.
That's great.
Like just. Yeah, I don't know, Ryan. That's a tough question because I want to be better at every business right now. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do now, master some of the business side that I lacked before. I learned a lot of business, but I feel like there's a lot of gaps in what I do. And so trying to close those gaps up.
That's awesome. I love it, man. That's a great answer. Really good answer. What do you think is your favorite bad food to eat? Favorite junk food?
Oh man, I'm a sweet guy. I love sweets. Sweets all day long. Probably my mom's birthday was yesterday. We had these cupcakes called Gigi cupcakes. Probably like I could eat those every single day. So sweets of all sorts. Yeah. That's
awesome. I love that. What do you think is what do you think was the scariest moment of your life?
Jeez, man, I've had probably probably just in the middle of COVID, and getting out of COVID, not having COVID had nothing to do with COVID. It's just, so for me, I entered, into the pandemic in a very fortunate, scenario. I had just sold my school and I was grateful that the school that I sold was a well-oiled machine because they had no problems. They made it through COVID very well. So I was very thankful that me and my team put the work in to make that thing run the way that it ran before that disaster happened. But then afterwards, you know, it was 2.5 years literally before I made $1. And so that with a child is a very scary place to be. And so because it was different, right? Selling a school and then you feel relaxed in the beginning, but then all the time that it takes to re-get a business going and this stuff, you know, everything here, thankfully that we have an incredible network here. There's an incredible group of people here. And so now it's smoothing out. But I think that probably when you have children and you're like, whoa, what's a future looking like here? It's a very scary place to be.
It is absolutely, man. Yeah, and it's interesting too because like obviously every industry in the world pretty much was impacted by COVID. But when you look at an activity like Jiu-Jitsu, I mean, it's like, man, that's about as far from social distancing as it possibly gets.
Yeah.
And so, like, man, I saw lots of people that opened new schools. Like I have one friend of mine in Georgia who opened a school as the pandemic was happening, and so he had, and I think he had to shut it down, unfortunately. So there's a lot of like. Yeah, it was a very, very uncertain time, and I'm happy that your transition from LA to Tennessee happened at the right time because when you're relying on this as your source of livelihood, I mean that can be really scary if it's, you know.
I also think like when you go through all, because scary things are funny. It's sort of relative, right? The scariest thing that ever happened in my life was my son being in the hospital, but like then it's all relative, right? What's the newest? And that to me was like the most recent, like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting if things don't change, or the thought of what if they close everything down and there's nothing going on for a while. Like, So anyway.
Yeah, that's what freaked me out about it was that I expected it to take a couple weeks. I was just like, okay, yeah, this is like some new thing. They're going to get a vaccine for it. It's going to be whatever. And then it just kind of kept dragging on. And after a year, I'm just like, dude, what the hell is, man, is this the way it is from now on? Like, man,
yeah,
so that's, thankfully it all blew over, but man, I can totally understand being in your position as an instructor, like relying on it to, I can imagine how tough that would be. Let me ask you this one. What do you think is, do you prefer a takedown or a guard pull?
Oh, takedown, man. I mean, there's no straight answer. Well, you know this, Ryan, with me. There's no like.
This whole thing's a setup, Shawn.
Yeah. This is probably what I'm good at. Like thinking about all the scenarios in a fraction of a second. I'm like, okay, whoa. All right. So this is what I'll say though. My definition of a takedown is not what conventional takedowns look like. My definition of a takedown is anything on the feet that puts me in a good position when we land. Yeah. So that could be a guard. So I can pull guard into like, we'll just use Amy Campo as an example from ADCC. She pulled butterfly guard and sweat Sumigation right to the top. That's fine. That's cool. So to me, that qualifies as a takedown. So I would say those are equal, but the premise is ending in a good position once it hits the floor.
Yeah, that's a very good detail for sure. Yeah, because you're right. Some people have a game where they prefer fighting off their back. They're really good at sweeps, and at the end of the day, if you pull guard and sweep someone right away, I mean you got to the same place, man. Congratulations. The destination is the same. Yeah,
that's right. Our sport is very unique in that nature, where we don't get points just because somebody's back hit the mat. We get points because of the position we end in and the control that we end in, and not only points. I mean, that stakes get higher when you get out in real life. Like you're not always going to be able to take someone down. If it happened that you got put down and you reverse someone, but you end up on the top, and where it really matters, hey, that's it. That's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely, great answer, man. Who do you think's your favorite MMA fighter of all time?
George. I mean, I think that's kind of an easier, and. Because I was involved in a lot of the stuff that he was doing, you see how really ahead of his time professionally he was. And so that's an easy one as far as that goes. Renzo is my favorite in the heart, just because he's the one who, I mean, he just went after it, right? Like when I first started, he was like trying to fight Mark Coleman. When Mark Coleman was like a guy lifting up the world, and with like one finger, he's like, "Let me fight Mark Coleman." So for me, heart wise, Renzo is, but as far as like just a consummate professional, and the guy that led the way for the new generation of MMA for without a question, George St. Pierre. And I think that he is just his nature and his character it's an easy way to say, yeah. I mean, because I think he was recently asked, like, who's the best fighter of all time? And he was like, we haven't seen him yet. That's such a George answer, and it's such a true answer. We really haven't seen the best person that's going to come, because we're still very new in our sport.
Yeah, excellent. No, excellent choice, man. GSP is obviously a legend, one of my favorites. Okay, so here's another one. It's kind of in the same line of thought. Favorite all-time grappler and favorite current day grappler.
Oh my Lord. I have an interesting take on tape study. I always tell people not to study people. I tell them to study technique. I don't like people studying people, essentially. I think because everybody does something great. And so you can pick up something great from that person. You can pick up something great from that person. You can pick up something great from that person. And so study everyone. I think that's a very key thing to think about. So I have a hard time saying who's my favorite grappler, just because I think probably at the greatest of all time is Hodger. I think that's a safe bet to say. And at the time, he fought his greatest nemesis in the sport. That's who he fought the best in the world, and solved the problems that they presented. And I think there were very few people that Hodger ever fought that presented a problem that he didn't solve. He solved them all. And so I think that is something unique in him, that really, even in modern day, we haven't seen that yet, So I think he's probably one of the few, if one of the only, that has solved every problem that he's faced in grappling.
That's a great answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
How about modern day? Who's your favorite in the modern times? Modern
day, gee whiz. I mean, I would say Gordon is one of my favorites, and I'm not being. That's not just because because he is sort of a extended teammate or whatnot.
Sure.
I like just his game is really well suited to be a very dominant game. He's very, very good at everything. And I think, his approach and John's approach is very, very good. And, I had a lot to do with a lot of that. So it's nice to see a lot of the stuff that John and I worked on throughout the years, and then I would work on stuff and bring it back to New York. It's nice to see it work on the highest levels, but it's hard to say, again, I have these caveats. Gordon has not solved every single problem he's been presented with. Nicky Rod, just the last tournament, presented him with some problems that he couldn't solve. And that's why I say Hodger is a little different. He solved people trying to stall him out. He solved these problems, and he was still able to dominate them and submit them. It's hard for me to say who my best, the modern day is. I think that I would go back to what George said. We haven't seen him yet. The guy or gal that is the mindset that they are great at everything. I think that's going to be coming soon with some of these young guys, the young people coming up. Holy moly, amazing.
Yeah.
Some of the young guns coming up, just unbelievable that what their skill sets look like and how well versed they are everywhere.
Yeah, it really is exciting times, man. Yeah, like you see like some really, like you said, some young blue belts even. Like I was just watching Pans yesterday for the blue belt day. It's just like, man, some of the game is the waters have gotten so deep over the years, and there's so many, and the growth of the sport and the popularity is bringing in so many new people that just it's a really exciting time to be following jiu-jitsu, man, for sure. What do you think is your biggest phobia?
That's a good one. I don't
have to know. You're a 3-time Pummel champion. I have to throw these harder ones at you constantly.
Yeah,
we have to increase the pressure, man.
Yeah, I don't see fear as a weakness. I think that we all have fear. So I don't know that I have a phobia, to be honest. Sharks.
Yes,
that's one.
That's mine too. That's mine too.
That's it. I can't stand those dudes.
I can't eat, dude.
You know what I mean?
They're godless killing machines.
They are, man. And so Jaws, the movie Jaws, created this thing, and we are forever going to be tormented by that music. You're out in the middle of the ocean, and when your feet leave the sand, you hear it. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. So sharks, every time I see these videos of these guys, like the great whites swimming right at them, I'm like, I wouldn't. Yeah, that'd be it. Like, I'd be it. I'd melt.
There's no amount of money that you could pay me to get inside one of those shark tanks. One of those shark cages. No thanks. I'll just
yeah. I mean, they say like you have a better chance of winning the lottery than being like eaten by a shark. But the thing is this, right? You have to play it to win it.
Right.
So like if you're going swimming with sharks, man, you're playing the lottery. You're playing it. You're playing the
Well, you know what else about that thing, though, when people defend sharks and say, oh, they're actually quite docile and they mind their own business. Okay, fine. You have a better chance of winning the lottery than getting killed by a shark. But that's the key word there is killed. I want to know the statistics of people that lose arms and lose feet and lose toes. It's like, dude, you're leaving those numbers out because you're trying to defend these things. But dude,
that's right.
They're killing machines. They're killing machines.
That I guess that would probably be my biggest phobia. That is it.
I'm right there with you.
Those things.
Dude, we didn't have cable as a kid, so TBS was just always on, and I swear, like they must have just had a guy there that was just high all day and like didn't want to like select movies and didn't want to put a lot of thought into it. Jaws was on like every day on TBS,
all the time.
So it just like embedded in me. Like even as a kid, I get in the swimming pool, and if I close my eyes, I'd freak out and have to open up and like get back to the shallow end.
That's right. Yeah,
it traumatized me.
Yeah.
Traumatized
I know.
Yeah.
Those were great and horrible movies.
That's so good. What do you think is your most hated food? What's something that you can't eat no matter what?
Uni.
Oh, uni.
You know,
Yeah.
oh man, I can't do it.
Can't do it.
I've been to like some really fantastic sushi places in Japan, and like no matter where it is, that one, I just can't do it.
Can't quite do it.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
I feel you on that. Yeah. I like most sushi things, but yeah, uni's not one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah.
What
do it.
What do you think is something that you spend way too much money on?
Toys for my kid. But that's acceptable. You know what I mean?
Totally good. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably besides, because children you get a buy with those things, right? Maybe gadgets.
Gadgets.
That's, you know? Yeah. Like I like gadgets. And so I probably too much on that.
That's cool. I like that. Yeah, the toy thing with kids is fun because you get to kind of relive everything. Like it's kind of like an excuse to play with Ninja Turtles again, and like, you know.
I know. It's the best, man. My mom just brought down my Transformers, so I have like all the old original Transformers and all this stuff. So she just brought them down. My son's old enough now that we're playing with them all. I'm like, this is the best, man. This is like a little kid again.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's funny how like I'm pushing 40 now, and like if I sat by myself and played with Ninja Turtle figures, they'd think something was wrong with me or something. But then you just insert my son and my 1-year-old, and it's like, oh, okay. Little do they know I'm having more fun than he is. Like these things. These things are awesome. Yeah. So,
it's the
best. What's the first car you ever owned?
It was a '66 Chevy Impala.
Nice. That's
so I like classics. That was the first car I ever had. So classic hot rods are my favorite.
That's awesome. Good one, man. I like that. What's your favorite superhero?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think probably I'm going to go with my childhood favorite now, because I think it's been reinvigorated in me, is the Hulk.
The Hulk. Nice.
The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, that's it. It. The Incredible Hulk. I think the Incredible Hulk is kind of how I am, right? But I'm more patient, right? But when I blow, it's like, whoa, watch out! You know, it's like it's bad.
The gi starts stretching, right. And the cuffs rip.
And I wear a lot of purple pants, and they rip right off. You know, like, ah. So the awesome. Hulk, yeah.
I love it. What if you could have a superpower? What would you choose?
I would probably say time travel, to be able to stop time.
Good
I think who could control time. It would be probably the master of all things.
That's a good one. I really like that. And Shawn, final question for the Pummel Game. If a zombie apocalypse breaks out right now, what's the first thing you do?
Go get my son and my wife and get to and run for the hills.
Get out of there. Yeah.
Which zombie? Hold on. Wait, I told you there's no straight answer,
no, this is great. I'm so glad.
What zombie, buddy? What zombie? Are we talking about? Like Day of the Dead? Like we talking about way old, like Night of the Living Dead zombies? Are we talking about the ones that run after you and spit at you?
I respect so much the follow-up, because no one ever asks that question. So you get extra points on this Pummel Game. This is why he's a returning champion. Champion. So, okay, well, you either have like 28 days later zombies where they're fast and they're aggressive. You've got the ones that are kind of slow and dumb and can't really do much. Yeah. I'm going to say 28 days later. Or have you watched The Last of Us?
I've seen parts of that. Yeah, that's the show.
That's right? The new one. Yeah, there's a video game first, then they made a show on HBO. Pretty cool. Kind of in line. It's more 28 days later style zombies, where they're a little more athletic, they're a little more capable.
they sprint and jump.
Yeah. So let's say athletic, aggressive zombies.
Yeah, you went right to the biggest problem then. Yeah, I would 100% say, get my wife and kids, get to the ammo center as fast as I can, and then go camp out at like Target where they have food.
Yes.
But you got to barricade the doors, right?
Yes.
You need something. You got to cover all your bases. You're in trouble, man. I don't think any of those movies actually ended well. They at least the rational ones.
Yeah.
They ended horribly. There's nothing that we were gonna do to beat those type of zombies. We're done.
I like that you mentioned a Target, because my goal, my strategy has always been that whoever can lock down a Costco first.
That's a better.
Has a pretty good.
You just hit them.
It's just pallets and pallets and pallets of dried goods and clothes and
that's it.
Yeah,
Costco trumped my Target. I didn't, Target I thought was a step up from Walmart, which was my first thought. Like, no. We got Walmart. You try to barricade the doors and things are gonna break. But to get to Target, at least they're gonna make it through, right? But Costco trumps it all. I mean, they got the big iron doors. maybe they built those things for the apocalypse. You never know.
I think they're efficiently built. They don't put too much into the whole like aesthetics of the building. It's more just a square, strong, sturdy, hurricane-proof kind of building. Yeah. But the Costco, the Target one's not a bad idea. It's the same concept. You want to find a big depot full of stuff, full of supplies, and lock it down. So I think Costco, just because it's high, it's just like high volume stuff, is sort of the one that always
Costco is definitely, now that you're saying this, like you've definitely cleared up this, what is going to be, because Costco, there's only one way in and one way out.
Yes. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, everything, maybe there's a loading dock, but there's no windows. No. There's not like, you know what I mean?
No.
Target, there's windows everywhere. I'd be screwed. Yeah. You just saved my life, buddy.
Dude, no, I'm telling you, man. Well, you and I we'll meet halfway somewhere between Tennessee and then we'll lock down a Costco, and then we'll build a network.
That's right. You bring my inventory belt back from the Home Depot days, and I will meet you at Costco.
We'll have Shawn logging all the expiration dates so no one gets like food poisoning for eating.
I'm so fast. I would be so fast at my little calculator.
That's amazing. Shawn, congratulations, man! You win the game for I think the third or fourth time, and you you got your double underhooks. Congratulations.
Sweet.
So man, moving back into some of my questions that kind of go in line with all the with the overarching topic of the day. Shawn, sometimes when people analyze their own game, they recognize that a high percentage submission could be the central focus of their game. Like if they look at their performance and they start taking journals, they might realize, man, I land like a lot of kimuras, or I landed a lot of triangles, and as a result, they might often associate that move with being the identity of their overall style. Like we all know people that are great leg lockers or great with kimuras and things like that. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you tend to encourage students to build a game that centers around a favorite position, or do you encourage them to build a game around a submission if they do one well?
Right. So I always, now again, it's really individual, but as a whole, my approach is get to the back or mount, and so position first, then start the submission chain. And so high percentage submissions are a good idea. Submissions that keep you in control when they fail are a good idea. But you can then go off on anything. I have a thing called closed loop. So a closed loop is nothing more than a system, a small system that if it fails, it resets where you started. So we could use all kinds of submissions. So let's just use two as an example. Let's use katagatami from the mount, because I feel like that, without the gi, I feel like that should be everybody's go-to. It's a strangle. That means you don't have to break arms. You put someone to sleep. And it has a very well planned out loop if it fails. So say, when you're mounted, you can finish katagatami on the mount. That's for number one. But say you have to dismount all the way over. When someone turns away from you, it's an easy thing to get a gift wrap. It's almost always there. That means that your move to the back is going to be very easy to get to. And then the move from the back, if they do escape, it's very simple to just go right back to the mount. And now you're in mount again, and katagatami could just come right back around. So that's a submission that keeps you on the top of the ladder. Where it starts on the mount, it could end on the mount if all things go poorly. Let's take a look at an arm lock, for example, if we're talking about a loop. So say you do a mounted arm lock, you fall back. An arm lock is a tremendous pin until you extend the arm. Once the arm is extended, now the control of the body starts to lighten, because now you just have your legs on their body. Still could be good control, but it lightens compared to where you were when you're seated up and you've got weight on them. They can't really hitchhiker out, versus you extend the arm and then they go. We'll just use hitchhiker for an example. If you don't submit them in an arm lock, now you have to figure out a way to get back to the mount, to have an efficient loop system. So you would have to maybe go, hey, I'm going to omoplata you. Then you're going to forward roll out of omoplata. I'm going to come up to your forward roll onto the side mount. Then I'm going to mount. So that would be a much longer process and a much more complicated process than if you chose like a submission that had more control in nature. So I'm always a fan of choosing submissions that have a little more control if they fail. They still end you in a good position if they fail, and you can easily systemize something to get back to where you started. So that's kind of our approach. Now, I believe that there are two approaches to jiu-jitsu. One is you use control, and that leads you into submission. So you position first, submission second. But then you can flip it. You can use submissions to get to position as well. But you better be really good at them. You know what I mean? You better have that submission all ironed out. So I like omoplata. Because of Williams guard, omoplata is the easiest way to get out of there. I built a large system into omoplata on how to get to the top and how to recover from omoplata to use it to my advantage. So there are many things that can happen, but if you can narrow them all down and have only when certain things happen, if you are only allowing your opponent or training partner to do one or two things, it becomes calculated, it becomes mathematical, and it becomes easy to head them off the pass. So if you do choose a submission approach, you got to make sure that it's you have a very well-rounded, proactive approach to building something into your game that makes sense.
That's excellent. Yeah, I really like that a lot. Yeah. The importance of having it tied in with a control factor, like you said, is super important because, it keeps you from losing position completely or losing, ending up in a bad position. If there's failure, and there's always going to be some degree of failure in jiu-jitsu with whatever you're doing. Yeah. So being able to get to a place where there's control as a backup is super important. So I totally agree with you on that. Shawn, something cool that happens while people are on the developmental path in jiu-jitsu is that we discover our own custom ways of doing things. And if you experiment with things enough, you can even come up with your own variations of positions or create unique submissions and setups. Like most recently, the buggy choke is a good example of a technique that was developed by just experimenting with new things. Over the years, have you seen students come up with interesting techniques by not restraining their creativity on the mats? Yeah,
I think so. Obviously, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So if you are training with the people that you cannot handle or you can't, then your creativity can come. Sometimes you can create things that work on people that you couldn't deal with them before, and through trying and experimenting and playing around, that's how moves are made, in my opinion. That's kind of how we made a lot of moves at Renzo's. I mean, I tell a story quite a bit, but one day Renzo was teaching I think it was some sort of arm and guillotine or crucifix, and someone called him over and said, "Hey, I'm getting tapped by this. Is this right?" And he looked, he's like, "No, that's not what we're doing, but let me feel it." And he got in there, the guy did it, and he was like, that's a legit strangle. And this guy was a white belt that was on bottom. He's doing the move wrong, but it was working. And so, that's a testament to how open he was for creativity and learning. And so those things, I think, can happen organically because they have to happen, or they can happen through mistakes. And as long as you're just open and playing around, you invite that. And I think that's an important part of progression. Now, I don't say go create a move. You know what I mean? Because once again, if it's not something that's happening through skills and the necessity of something, it can get really far off and far-fetched. And so we have to be careful of that. I think that we have to be a little cautious on. Yeah,
sure. Well, it's funny you mentioned how in the early days at Renzo's, a lot of you guys were very open to exploring different things. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the Darce choke traced back to Renzo's room?
Yeah, 100%. That was Danaher.
Yeah.
There, in my opinion, there was a lot that was came back. The anaconda, the way that we used to do the anaconda, the dart was different. You roll through. The Darce choke, Danaher brought that one around. I used to call it the Danaher. It was called Darce after my friend Joe D'Arcy. Someone had been submitted by him and then said, I don't know what this guy Darcy was doing. This guy Darce was doing it. And then it became, that's how it was named. There's a move that is very popular in MMA. It's a guillotine sort of from the back with the arms stuck over like this. Ricardo Almeida brought that one. I still call it the Almeida guillotine because he had really, I don't know where he got it, but he brought it to us. There's a no-gi. I could get going on and on and on. I mean, and that's the point. The point was because everyone was so good, new stuff had to happen because we were just playing and training and everyone was training so much, and to get the edge, you had to do something. So some of the sweeps that I made were because I couldn't sweep these guys with normal sweeps. And so then I had to feed the lapel some way or go upside down and oh, wow, that worked. And I'd never seen it before, and cool. It came about. So there's a no-gi clock choke that Rodrigo made because in wrestling we were working on a bunch of tight waists, and I showed him a tight waist one time. Hey, Rodrigo, we're working on this in wrestling. It's really working. Let's play with it. And he put his arm in the wrong place, but then it became a legit like no-gi clock choke that is insane. Wow. And so it's like, dude, it just comes out like that. And then you pay attention to it, and then you go try it. Of course, it's gotta pass a test on the upper levels, but if it passed the test on the upper levels, then you're in for a legit good move.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's one of the coolest things about jiu-jitsu is that it really is customizable in that way, and you really can be pretty creative with things that you try and do. In fact, you're a great example of this as well. You're the developer of the Williams guard. I know we've talked about this in the past, but for the people that haven't heard the story behind that, how did you discover the Williams guard?
Yeah, it was by mistake. Nino Shimri had come up. He's very flexible and had great omoplatas. And so I took that game with the gi and went with it. But then we were training for a fight. Rodrigo was training for a fight. We had tank tops on so that everybody's arms and shoulders would be slippery. And it just didn't work. What I was doing didn't work. Everybody slid right out of it. So then I just made a mistake of going under my leg and holding somebody's shoulder. And all of a sudden, boom, like I could hold them. And it was productive. And then when that happened, all my training partners figured out that if they drove their head over mine, they could go back in and then pull out again. And so then the frame came. And so it was because it was a necessity thing. It came about by necessity, same thing like body lock pass. I mean, the history of the body lock pass, that's very popular right now. Right. So that's a big one. And, I have fun stories about the body lock. Renzo was the first guy I ever saw do it. He did it in 2001 was when that pass started. And as far as I know, he did it. And I was like, whoa, what was that? And he body locked the guy and passed the guard. And it was like, he did it easy. And I was, wow, what is that? So we started doing body lock, very, very rudimentary. And then when I moved to California, I took the near side underhook and the body lock and I ran with it. I literally that was what I worked on for a very long time with wrestling. I had a very, very good wrestling mentor in LA named Rico Ciparelli. And the combination of underhooks that we were doing from the feet translated into the floor very well. We went off on a tangent and that became what it is now. I mean, the body lock, the history of the body lock is a very interesting one. I remember sending here's a true testament to being open, right? I sent a very good friend of mine the body lock pass via video. I said, look, man, this thing is, I train, for number one, I train with world-class guys all the time. I think that was something that I was very lucky to have good friends that were world champions and that were world class. So I was lucky in nature. I feel I was very fortunate in nature to surround myself with these people that were kicking the crap out of me day in, day out. And that stayed in LA. I had a very good friends, a bunch of very good network friends that were world champions. And so the things that I did and got to work on, I was testing on them. I wasn't doing them on my white belts. I was testing it on these guys. And the things that worked on these guys, I was like, this is good. I'm old. I'm an old guy, and it's working on these guys that are young and in their prime. So it's good. I want to spread that. I want to share it. And I sent a video to one of my very good buddies, and he was like, that'll never work. This was the body lock, mind you. Wow. That'll never work. And this was in 2011. And I'm like, no, it actually does work, and it is working, and we should spend some time on it. Later, he very much changed this tune and said, yes, okay, this is not only working, I want you to show all my students. And so I did. And then it became a world, it was on the world stage at that point. So yeah. And it was cool to see that. It's cool to see that evolution happen.
That is cool. It's funny you mentioned that Renzo was the first person you really recall using that effectively. Yeah. Thinking back, I swear I've seen old footage of Renzo and high end rolling. In fact, it might have just been from the Legacy documentary, where I'm pretty sure Renzo was using body locks on Ryan on high end at the time. Yeah. So that is awesome, man. It's really cool it's just another good example that resistance encourages innovation. And that's this is the kind of art where we're constantly trying to resist each other at all times. And even when you get good at something, people have to start figuring out the solutions, and it makes you have to then adjust, and it just keeps evolving from there. So
it does.
What do you think? Getting back to the Williams guard, it's such an effective position from the back, and I use it often in my game personally. What do you think are the most important details of using the Williams guard well? Like, what causes some people headaches when they first start learning it? What are some of the learning curves in your opinion?
So you got to get on when you're on your side, you need a good frame, and when you have the frame, you have to have that 90-degree. It's not about pushing people's head away. It's actually about the bend in your elbow needs to be 90, and so it's more about keeping them where they are than it is about pushing their head away any further than what your arms will lock in on that 90-degree frame. I think that's where people struggle a little bit. And then understanding that if there's some forward drive, that the far foot needs to be on the hip to keep an angle when people drive in. I think those things are can trouble people. It's a very simple game. I mean, it's a framed version of an overhook. You know what I mean? And I think because we did so much overhooking in the closed guard because so many guys were fighting, when I made that, it just translated right over really well. I mean, the sole purpose of the Williams guard is essentially to get to the trap triangle, and then start a closed loop trap triangle system that you hopefully submit someone. And then if you get in trouble, omoplata is always going to be there. And most people at this point, when most of my training partners just circled out to omoplata once they felt like, okay, it's either omoplata or trap triangle. I'd rather be an omoplata than trap triangle. So then, that's why then your omoplata gets very good. And then understanding when it's not good at all, like understanding that if somebody gets over your far foot, your unframed foot, you need to go. It's time to move on. It's not a thing that you just hold on and for dear life. It's if they get over your foot, it's time to go to omoplata or abandon ship.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny. When I started adding that into my game, I was again, I think it was about a purple belt. And the struggle that I had initially was just getting their posture broken down, like getting them into the right range to apply. Because, guys, they want to sit nice and high, they want to keep good posture. So I had to learn how to use like proper knee pulls and how to pummel the arms properly to make my knee pulls more effective, to get them into that range where I could then get the overhook and look for the Williams guard. And then obviously, like since you've created your instructional with us at BJJ Fanatics, that's helped me immensely. Like a lot of the problems I was having have been completely ironed out. For the listeners out there, I really do recommend it. It's actually one of our very best sellers, and you should definitely have this in your library. It's called the Complete Williams Guard. It's available right now at bjjfanatics.com. So if the closed guard is something you guys are wanting to improve upon and you're looking for some more options, the Williams guard is a really, really good option. I highly recommend it.
Thank you. And may I add something, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely.
I will add that that is not just about so every instructional that I have on Fanatics, and I would like to discuss the body lock if you don't mind, but it's not just about what it says. So the Williams guard is actually like a very short part of if you're looking to get a closed guard, that's a closed guard DVD, and or instructional. My age is coming out, and also there's so much about the omoplata, about the clamp guard, about how to do a single leg on there. Like there's a lot of stuff on there that I feel like sometimes people will ask me a question. I'm like, no, that's on there. It really is. We spend a lot of time filming that thing, and I spent a lot of time putting a lot of information into it. And so it's sort of more than just a Williams guard. If you have trouble with closed guard, that's a good one, because really the pummeling, as you mentioned, from the guard, breaking posture, is one of the strong suits of that instructional, I feel like.
Yeah, that's something I really appreciated about it as well, because you weren't just showing the options of what can be done. You were really elaborating on all the options. Like you were really kind of going down each rabbit hole of saying, okay, now he does this, you can do this. Really, really well done, man. And also you mentioned the body lock instructional. I did want to mention that as well.
Yes. So that is one of those things that I was talking about earlier. Like I really from Renzo, and then I went off on a tangent on like body lock passing, and it became it's one of my staples. It's one of my staple passes, whether it's without an arm or arm in. But again, what is overshadowed is the near side underhook on that. But really if body lock passing was a movie, the whodunit would be the near side underhook at the end. And I'm really happy to see like all of the near side underhooking happening right now in the world, because I feel like that pass or that control element, it will change the way people see jiu-jitsu and the way it's done. I've been doing this like since 2005. Like I saw BJ Penn do it one time, And then that inspired me to go like, hey, this was like 2004, 5, like inspired me to start playing. And ever since that became part of my game, the ending to all of those passes, it becomes near side underhook. And then when you have a good near side underhook, you really are a menace. I mean, it's a menace. I've so much that I've renamed one of the cross side positions. Right now we call it low side, but my son just had a much better name for it. He's like, I showed him, he's like, oh, isn't that diagonal mount, Dad? I'm like, that's such a great name for it. It's side mount. You know, you're in the side mount, but it's diagonal and you have a near side underhook and everything goes, you mount or you get the back. And it's becoming such a strong element in the passing game. I feel like if you are enticed by body locking, that instructional really is much, much more than a body lock. It's a system. It's a system of how to pass a butterfly guard, but really highlighting how strong a near side underhook is and how, and what it will do and how it'll change the game. And now we're seeing it in tournaments finally. Like we saw it sporadically or accidentally before. Now we're seeing it purposefully. And I'm glad to see what people are doing with it.
Yeah, well, it's another example of one of those things that feels like it should have been taught way before for most people. But that that inside body, the inside underhook, man, it's one of those things that once you start using it, you realize how effective it is. And it's like, man, why did I not learn this like from the jump?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. It's unbelievable. I think what happens is it's very finicky. So I think if you're off here or there, your weight's not quite right, or you think that because the person will often recover underneath you, but if you are adept of where they're recovering, it just puts them in a worse. Eventually, you're going to mount and take their back. They might recover something, but it's minimal, and the progression forward can just put you right back in a good position. So I don't know. You know, I saw Hoist used it in UFC 1, I believe. Hickson used it on his fight in Takada. Now I don't believe that they were. And I don't know, I never asked them this question, but I don't believe it was purposefully. I don't believe it was like, this is what I do, I'm going to do this. I believe it was just so strong that they just mounted on people. It was a very strong method of control, and they knew where they were going. They were fighting, so they were mounting on a fight. But again, you know, it's just one of those things that we're so young in our sport that all of a sudden you're playing with this and you're like, well, this is different. And this is productive, and why was I not doing this? And then, you know, I think it just boils down to like, go outside the norm, play, try things, question things, get good at things, try different things, learn from everywhere. Because really what also helped my approach and progression of near side underhook was wrestling. You know, a lot of the wrestling that I have done in the past with all my wrestling coaches, and that really helped. So, yeah.
That's incredible, man. Yeah, guys, like we said, whether you're wanting to get improvement on your back or from your passing, Shawn has two great options for you here at BJJFanatics.com. It's either the complete Williams guard system for if you guys are wanting to fight better off your back, and Body Lock the World is instructional for his body lock passing. Both very robust systems and instructionals, and I really do recommend them. Again, they are two of our very best sellers, so definitely add them to your library. Shawn, man, in closing, what are some of your major goals for 2023? What are some things you hope to accomplish by the end of the year?
Yeah, thank you. I building the team that we have, building better cohesion and my staff, my team. I always feel like I have a great team, blessed, and I just want to keep like building all of their skill sets and building coaches, building people, building the world. I want to share more and more jiu-jitsu with the general world, as well as some of my coaching approaches with the world. And then I'm in development on something here that I'm really hoping takes off, because I believe it'll be a slightly different approach to jiu-jitsu academies in general. Cool. and make jiu-jitsu academies compete with some of the biggest businesses in the world, like in the fitness and space and different things like this. So if I can make that happen and work, I think it would really be neat for everyone, and that in the world of jiu-jitsu. So we'll see, but it's in the works, and we'll see how long it takes me to do it. That's
incredible, man. Well, I'm always excited to see the new things you're working on, man. You're always looking to push the envelope and spread the word of jiu-jitsu and improve the art in various ways. So I appreciate everything you do, man. That's really outstanding.
Well, I appreciate you, and thanks for the time, man. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Shawn, as I've said, man, you're one of my favorite people to talk to. You're one of my favorite people in the jiu-jitsu world. I appreciate you coming back for the fourth time to do another interview with me. You always bring great content and advice to the table, and you're welcome back anytime you ever want to come back on the show.
Hey, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. And also just that link, I'll put some goodies up on my website with a slash of fanatics, just for everyone that's listening here. Hopefully all the tips help you out and get you on your way to a proactive planning your game, so you can see who you are going to be in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It was a real pleasure to be here, Ryan. I love hanging out with you for the time that we're on.
Likewise, man. I really do appreciate it again. And for anyone out there that wants to keep up with Shawn, it's really easy to do so. He's active on Facebook. His Facebook page is Shawn Williams BJJ. Make sure you guys follow there. For Instagram, it's at Shawn Williams BJJ. His YouTube is just Shawn Williams. If you type that in, his channel will pop up. Make sure you guys hit subscribe and hit the little bell icon to get notified when he adds new content. And then Shawn just mentioned a special link he has for his website for Fanatics fans. Shawn Williams ShawnWilliamsBJJ.tv/fanatics. If you guys go to that link, he's got some special goodies just for the folks that follow Fanatics. So make sure you guys go and check that out. If you guys ever are traveling through Nashville, he has an outstanding academy. It's a beautiful facility. Renzo Gracie, Nashville. I really recommend you guys dropping in. If you can't make it out to Nashville, thankfully you can learn from Shawn anywhere in the world here at BJJ Fanatics. We discussed two of his instructionals today, the Complete Williams Guard and Body Lock the World. And he's got several others as well. So make sure you guys go to bjjfanatics.com, type in Shawn Williams, and get some of that knowledge. And Shawn, I really do appreciate it once more, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics Podcast.